All right, who is going second? Tets?
I was.
Yeah, all right. The floor is yours, sir.
I'm gonna kind of run through this a little bit fast because I can hear the little one in the other room going nuts. So I'm gonna have to bounce as soon as we get done. But no,
yo, man, I don't like this. Your role as a father is cutting into podcast time. I'm not okay with that.
Hey,
yeah, man, get your priorities.
Okay?
Yeah, man.
For real, dog.
I can bring you in here and let you tell her that to her face.
Dude,
no, man, I'm gonna pass.
Tetsuo?
I suddenly came down with like a really bad sickness. I gotta go.
No,
I will tell that baby the harsh truths of the world. Get her in here.
Uncle
she'll
Mal.
look at you and go, because that's all she does these days.
She's so wise beyond her years. I would have agreed with that.
I know,
immediately.
I told you she is more mentally developed
You
than
need
I
to
was.
learn that life is suffering, Tets.
Eventually she will.
She'll know. She'll know.
Anywho, let's not actually hold you up any further.
That's alright. No, but so for me, the holidays, I usually end up getting a bunch more model kits. I have this growing backlog of models that need to be finished, and I just keep getting more. But part of that this year, I got more tools and what's the word I'm actually looking for?
Trinkets.
Materials. Well, but like the materials, like, so mainly paints, but I also got like some sanding sticks. I got some weathering effects and things like that. So I'm gonna get to play with some stuff I haven't been able to play with before. And so for the most part, that's what I've been thinking a lot about. And so I thought I'd just kind of go through a quick rundown of like, so specifically I was thinking about the paints, and then I had recommended Meta recently Vallejo paints over Citadel, which is your normal
Speaking of, I do gotta ask you like where you would get those, because I tried searching them up.
Do you have a Hobby Lobby?
Probably somewhere.
That's where all the Vallejos I have, I've gotten from Hobby Lobby. I think you can get them on
Hobby Lobby
Amazon
tends to
too.
carry them.
Really?
They're really good for the price. Vallejo is.
Yeah, I mean,
I love
it's the main paint everyone recommends, especially when anyone mentions Citadel. They're like, no.
Go to Vallejo.
Right.
Go to Vallejo.
No
Wow.
Citadel.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things with Citadel that I like. So I guess we'll start with some brand differences between Citadel and Vallejo, just because this is probably the easiest part to jump into.
Yo, I'm ready for my education. I got my notes, pencil, and everything. Come on, quiz me, bro. Let's go.
So there's a couple differences as to why people tend to prefer Vallejo. The first one is that it's you don't have to water them down. You don't have to thin them down at all. You can paint Citadel out of the pot, but you need to thin your paints. Like, don't, like, you can, it goops up everything, you end up losing detail, it's best to, but then you have the pots, right? Like, how do you get the paint out in order to water it down, right? Like, that's in and of itself a whole thing.
That's actually a really good question. I never even
Get
thought
yourself
about
a wet.
A wet palette.
Thank you. I couldn't remember the word. I told you your daughter's more.
Make yourself a wet palette.
Yeah, you can with
they're super
paper
easy.
towels. Some water.
It's paper towels or foam or something like that placed in a shallow dish that you fill with water, something that absorbs, and then you put wax paper on top of that, and then the wax paper will slowly wick up the water, but just enough to keep, you put your paints then on the wax paper, and it's just enough to keep them wet, so then you put the lid on the shallow like container, and you can keep your paints on your palette for like a long time, like weeks and months.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to.
They won't dry out.
Right.
So you don't
and
waste.
so because you're doing that, it's easier to thin them if you're going to thin them with water. Because that's another thing that we'll jump to in a minute. But the other thing about the pots, though, like, right, if you're going to build a wet palette, how do you get are you going to just pop the lid off and just turn the thing upside down, right? Like, how do you control how much you want? And so the other big thing that people tend to like about Vallejo, they come in dropper bottles. And so you can count, like, you can just do like 1, 2, 3 drops.
Yep.
And then,
It's easier to measure parts.
Yep. And then if you're going to mix paints, it's really easy to go, okay, I'm going to do 3 of this red and 2 of this yellow and 1 of this orange. Mix it up, and then you just note that down, and next time you can replicate that perfectly because you're using dropper bottles as opposed to try to replicate that if you did it, with Citadel, right? Like, it's...
I got like 1 brush full of this and this. Yeah. It's
yep, and
not
how
exact.
The brush full's the same amount, right? Exactly. Which, and to a degree, right? Like there is some leeway. So it kind of can come down to a little bit of nitpickiness in that regard. I will admit that, but just the dropper bottles just make it so much nicer. And there's a few companies that do that. I think Privateer Press does it with their P3 line. I know Reaper.
Some of their stuff they do.
Anybody who does a dropper bottle, I think, is just probably going to get a plus. You know, he's going to get a check off of my list, because having to go out of my way to like pour and to make sure and take care of that, when you can like do 1-2 drop and be done, that's all you really need. It's just a lot easier. It's very, very convenient.
Yep. But alternatively, with Citadel, if your paint begins to separate, if the pigment begins to go down, and it's less of an issue with like your main colors, but things like metallics, you'll start to see like the metallic flakes float to the bottom and the binder separating. It's a lot easier to remix Citadel because it's a pot, you open it up, you shove something in there and stir. Whereas the dropper bottles,
you really got to shake them up.
You really got to shake them up, but for lack of a better term, the nipple, the piece on the top where the dropper comes out.
Why are you embarrassed of the word nipple, Tess?
I'm trying to think of the right. No, embarrassed.
Never go into
pipe
ordering.
What the word is?
It
has a word.
Oh my gosh! Yes.
What did you say? I didn't hear Mal.
Never go into pipe ordering. You just a nipple is like a connector piece in pipes and stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, but it has a word to it. But anyway, it actually pops off. And
just the tip.
Yeah, just the tip pops off.
Right.
Just the tip.
Stop it, Mal.
Not the aerial left. It remains.
I know what you're doing. You stop that.
But then you can actually get like ball bearings or like something small. You can even like snip off a tiny piece of sprue and drop it in there, and then put the nipple back in and shake it up, and now you have an agitator within your dropper bottle. And so there's ways to get around it, but obviously it's just easier with Citadel.
Yeah.
So it kind of comes down to that kind of stuff.
You want to know something I like about Vallejo Tets?
What?
Lots of metallic colors.
Oh my goodness, they have.
I'm going to stop you right there, Obs, and let you finish later on. But hold on, I'm about to pull a moment here. I just utilize the mecha colors. I love them. They're great.
If you like those, then you'll like Vallejo. They have like a metallic version of every primary color.
The great thing about Vallejo is, in addition to, it's part of the reason why they have this many metallic colors, they have so many lines. Like Citadel, like I think total maybe have a quarter of the amount of paints that Vallejo has, and that's because they have I forget what they call the main one, but then they have model color, they have game color, which the difference is, are you building a model or is your miniature to like RPGs and stuff like that?
Yeah.
You have model air.
Crap, I didn't even notice that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then you have model air and game air, which are thinned for airbrush usage. That's really the only difference between them and their base ones. And then there's the mecha colors, which were specifically designed for Gunpla, so they hold better to unprimed plastics of the type that plastic of that Gundam are.
They're also wonderful because they actually have that kind of if you get like the metallic ones, they have like they have a wonderful like sheen to them.
Yes.
I honestly thought I was going to have to pick up a gloss with them just to kind of get that shine for some of the stuff that I was doing with miniatures. You don't even need it. You really don't. It's really good by itself.
Yep. And what it is kind of going back to, not only are they pre-thinned, but the pigments in them compared to Citadel are much smaller. So the size of the pigments, because they're smaller, when it comes to the metallics, you're not having like if you look into like a Citadel metal, right? Like you can actually see the flakes sometimes if you let it sit for a while. You can like see the flakes within there. You can't with Vallejo because they're so small, and because they're so small, when it goes on, it becomes so smooth and just gives you this nice metallic sheen, and it just levels. It levels so nicely. They're just such good paints. I use them for almost everything compared to Citadel. Like there's a couple shades in Citadel that I go back to just because I haven't been able to find equivalents, and I haven't bothered trying to mix them up yet from Vallejo. But now one thing that I do like using Citadels over Vallejo is, as much as their paints are awesome, their paints are there. If you ever want to do washes, their paints are amazing to make your own washes with. But their pre-made washes, while they're good, Citadel's washes are better. at least for me in my applications and the stuff I've discovered, Nuln Oil, no black. Yeah, no black wash that I've come across from Vallejo does quite as good as Nuln Oil does. They do good. They do the job. And if you want to just be, only Vallejo, go for it. They'll do what you need them to. I have Nuln Oil and I prefer it. And it's.
I swear by contrast paints. If you got a chance to use them yet,
I've not. I haven't.
They are very expensive, but. If you
Which one are those? The Citadel ones, or
yes, they're Citadel. I had a topic on them.
I have
one
heard
day.
pretty good. Yeah, I have heard good things.
They don't look great. Like
really?
you will get that. I mean, like they look presentable. I'm not like trying to shit on them. They look presentable. But if you just want to save time
for the time investment, right?
Yeah, for the time investment, they look perfectly fine. Unless you're like a professional grade A painter and money isn't an issue for you, then. I think they're pretty good, but otherwise, I don't
know if I could do it. I don't know if I could do it. It would always be stuck with me at the back end of my mind, knowing I could have used a regular and that would have been better looking.
Well, if you think about it one way, it's like investing in a paint and a wash at the same time.
Yeah,
they do the job, which is
But at the same time, you can get by with like 3 washes probably.
Right. Well, and they're designed for the guy who, like, I want to build my models together. I want to get them colored so that way, I'm not just putting unpainted stuff on the table. Yes. But I just want to get to gaming. I really don't care about painting. Somebody like me who got into Warhammer 40k specifically so I could paint miniatures.
You've got a problem.
Like, I have a hard time doing that.
You know who the real sad defeated guy is? It's the guy who shows up to play and all of his stuff is primed and not painted at all. And it's just like, it's the ultimate defeat.
I think
because I am that guy.
The guy that got me into it, he wouldn't actually like fully build his models. He'd only field bases and like part of it attached to the base, and like not even fully glue all the parts together yet.
I hate assembling.
I hate putting them together. I hate painting them. I just want to play with them. That's what I like. I know it's not stupid, but I'm like a child when it comes to it. I want to play with it. We had a board game that you had to put the pieces together. That board game, I kid you not, sat on our shelf for like 2 years, 3 years. I'm sorry, my wife is correcting me. 3 years before we finally sat there. I was like, okay, we actually need to play this game. So we finally put it together. If that game had come with everything pre-made, we would have played it within the first year.
Yeah.
I just hate putting stuff together.
Yep. And right, like that's where different paints too have their strengths and weaknesses, right? So, like, as much as you love the metals of Vallejo, there is one company, Allclad 2 is a line of paints. These metals they will make your plastic look like it's made out of machined aluminum aircraft metal. Like, they are amazing in turning your plastic to look metal. However, they take a large time investment. It takes skill to use it. It is very finicky with humidity, and even what primer you use can cause it to mess up. If you breathe on it wrong while it's drying, I'm a little bit exaggerating, but not totally. Like but the result is worth it if you're willing to do that. If you don't want to do all that stuff, don't use Allclad 2s. So.
All right, Teds, let me ask you, because you may have come across this. I'm about to start researching this on the YouTubes.
On the YouTubes?
Yeah. All right. Basing autumn foliage. What do you think? Because for leaves and stuff, I normally get like green tea packets and just use those. Use like glue, PVC glue or whatever.
Here's the secret that model railroaders use. Go outside. Go grab a whole bunch of leaves from your no, I'm serious. Grab different kinds of leaves, bring them inside, and blend them up, and then take them out. Like, only do like a couple pulses, take some out.
But my slap chop, Tits.
What?
My slap chop. I'm gonna ruin it. then Shlomi's gonna come after me.
But
your slap chop. Please arrest this man for even bringing that up.
Hey, I'm a gamer.
But so you do that, and then you just kind of keep on doing it a little bit, and then go out and get like some twigs that you can use.
I have done that, yeah, for logs and stuff.
Yep, and that's really the best way to do anything foliage wise.
I didn't think of that.
Yep, and then you probably are still going to have to paint them a little bit, and probably the best way would be using an airbrush or like a spray can or something and kind of dusting with it. But you really only need enough to make the luster similar to what your model is, because if you just leave it on there, it'll look different than everything else.
Yeah, the finish and all that.
Yeah, so you just need something that pulls it almost to make your brain trick your brain into thinking it's the same like art style, for lack of a better term. And really, you can probably hit it with a dull coat, and for the varnish for protecting your stuff. Before you then do anything else, and then just hit it with even like a dry brush of some color, and that might even be enough. So that's probably the best
that in mind.
way that I can think to do it. But again, too, right? Like that means you're going out, you're getting leaves, you're dirtying up your. If you have a spice grinder, those are perfect, or a coffee grinder, those are perfect. But then again, you're using your spice and coffee grinders to grind up leaves, right? Like that's
the spice must flow, bro.
So.
Actually, I got a real question for you here, man. Since we're talking about it, where would you recommend if you barring stores and whatnot, like your local hobby store or something? Where would you recommend online to go get these guys? Who would you recommend to buy from?
I get most of my stuff from Hobbytown USA, which is a local shop, but they do have an online store, and they're all over the United States. I don't know if there's any necessarily next to you, and you being the listener to this, but you can always go on their website and you can buy them from them, and they'll ship them out to you. And they have pretty much every Vallejo color and line that you can think of. They have it. Amazon, and it's going to be a good price. Amazon's another great place, but Amazon can be hit or miss for specific colors. When it comes to trying to find the colors, it's probably best to just go to the Vallejo's website and look up the colors, find the number, because they also have they do a really good job of numbering all of their paints. So like their model air will be like a 71 point something or 70 point something, and then whatever the something is goes to the specific color. Like I just now grabbed my dark yellow from model air, and it's 71.025. I could then now go to Amazon and put in that number, Vallejo, and it'll pull up that specific color that I want. But if I were to go to the Amazon and go, Vallejo yellow, I'm gonna get a ton of them, or maybe none of them. And so that is one thing. They're really good about giving you the specifics, but you got to go out of your way to find the numbers. So a little bit of a hit or miss. However, they do sell color packs that'll have like 4 to 6 paints in them, and it's not like some of the ones that you'll see like starter sets where you have like a bunch of paints, or they're just kind of random paints. Each one of them will follow a certain theme. So like you have one that is good for painting desert camo, another one's good for painting forest camo, another one's good for doing just mud and weathering. And I actually have one that specifically has colors designed to make painting non-metallic metals easily, which that's a whole technique that's I've not really messed with. That's really cool. That's where you don't actually use metallic paints, but by using gradients, you make it look like the flat paints you're using are metallic. It's crazy.
Also, favorite primer is the Vallejo airbrush black primer.
Yeah.
You can just brush it on. And it goes over so easy, and it keeps so much of the detail. It's way better than getting like a can, in my opinion, too.
Oh yeah, and they have primers in every single one of their lines, and then they also have a line of primers they have. I think it's something like 15 plus colors of primers just in their primer line. Like I have one for like a U.S. olive drab for tanks. Let's see. Yeah, U.S. olive drab, 70.608.
It's great when the primer color is just your base coat too.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and that's what they were trying to do. They made this line specifically for that purpose.
So then you don't have to base coat. You just prime it, and then you're like halfway done.
Right, exactly. And granted, they did originally start for model kits like like tanks and planes and stuff like that. So a lot of their stuff kind of comes from that point of view. But because of that, you get all of these surface primers. And because they're coming from that point of view, the surface primers are also really good to paint on top of. I know that's kind of the point of primers in general. But as you said, they don't obscure detail because they assume you're going to be doing a ton of stuff on top of this. They're assuming you're going to put more paints, you're going to be highlighting, you're going to be dry brushing, you're going to be doing mud, you're going to be doing all these other things. So it covers really well and really thin. Like it's not, it doesn't obscure your detail at all. It's nice and not like Citadels.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
How about this? So we've talked about, washes. We've talked about, the actual paints and whatnot. What about varnishes?
No. So, here's where things get, I don't want to say complex exactly, but I guess where you need to
But here we go.
It's personal preference, I'd say, more than anything.
So talking about Vallejo and Citadel and even Privateer Press and Reaper paints, these are all acrylic paints. What that means, pretty much their binder is made from acrylic, is really what it means. In addition to acrylic paints, you have enamels and lacquers. And lacquers can either be lacquer or a subset of enamel called an enamel lacquer, which still makes it technically a lacquer, even though it's related to enamels. Not going to get into a whole bunch of those, but if you ever, like, as a kid, got, say, one of the snap-together aircraft, and then you bought, like, the testers, the really tiny glass paint bottles, those were enamels. And the thing about enamels and lacquers, you have to use mineral spirits to clean your brushes. You can't just use water. You can't thin them with water. You have to use the right thinner. And on top of that, to varnish it, you have to use the right varnish. And that's where I'm kind of coming back around. So for acrylics are really nice where you can pretty much use any of the varnishes and be okay. Really, ideally, you were going to want to use an acrylic varnish, but if it doesn't say the type of varnish it is, it's probably acrylic. And then, I have the Testors Spray Lacquer gloss coat and dull coat and varnishes, and I've had no problem with them on my acrylic paints. They're perfect. It's a little rattle can, and it's perfect. They've done me really good.
Yeah, I just have a matte finish one from Walmart.
Yep, and I mean, again, Citadel has one. It has the Ard coat, and they have, I forget what their gloss coat version's called, which are good. And they are formulated to be a little bit stronger than just your model varnishes because it's assumed you're using Citadel paints to paint 40K stuff, which are handled a bunch. But I haven't found them to be any better than Vallejo's varnishes, Testors varnishes. Beyond that, I haven't fully experimented with varnishes either. So that's another caveat.
Yeah, it's honestly, I didn't even know varnishes exist until very recently. So you can tell how much I dabble in this painting. I try to avoid it and generally, don't paint for years on end before I finally pick up one. But I was looking over some of the products from Vallejo because like I said, I used them and I was very impressed with the colors because the original, when I first started picking up minis, was years ago. I probably 5 or so years ago, I would say. I picked up Reapers. I just picked up like a basic starter set. I wasn't expecting anything amazing out of it. I knew exactly what I was getting into. But having used the Vallejo now, and then Lily, ironically enough, she just suddenly decided to paint beside me. And started painting a different one, and kind of looking between the two products, I was just very impressed with like Vallejo on that level. Now those were newer, and the Reapers have been sitting there for like 5 years or so. So I'm giving that a very light coating, but I ended up looking into it. I was looking into different colors because I might actually end up replacing a lot of the old ones. They're very old, and I would like to get some new colors that I don't have. And I was looking into it, and I happened to come across varnish, and I was like, whoa, varnish. I didn't realize we were in woodworking now. So so I looked and I was like, oh, it's a product to put over it. So it, protects what I've made. I was like, how often do these paints, really wear away? I know now obviously it's gonna be different because you do have oil in your hand. It's gonna break down eventually if you keep touching it. But I realize how much does that actually happen? Is it worthwhile to get a varnish, so to speak?
To be honest, when it comes to acrylics on plastic, I've never noticed any degradation whatsoever.
Yeah, I've never varnished any of my stuff, but I also don't ever play with any of my stuff.
From what I understand from reading, your rank and file troops, like varnish is something you're probably only going to use, or that you really only need to use for your like special characters that you've decided to paint up like a masterpiece, and whenever you stop playing, you'll still put him on a display somewhere in your office, that type of thing.
Okay.
Varnishes do make it easier to dust your parts or your pieces as well. I'll say that if you're going to be displaying them, it's much easier to dust if it has a varnish on it. Don't know why. I just know that's true. But when it comes to plastic models, I have not noticed an actual need for varnish. Metal, on the other hand, I have. Not just from playing with them, but if you're not storing them right, whenever you transport them, if they kind of bump around a little bit, like they'll chip the paint off. And I do mean, it'll actually chip. Whereas I don't think I've ever seen chipping on a plastic one. Whereas if you do the varnish, it's going to be, it's going to protect from that. It's going to be harder to even start to chip. And then once it does chip, it's chipping that and not your paint. So if you're I would say if you have metal models, or if you're planning on displaying them, or they're just something that you are really proud of the artwork and you want to preserve it, varnishes are a good way to go. But
yeah, I just do it in general.
Yeah, if you're painting tons and tons and tons, you don't need to, but if you want to, there's no hurt in it. Because the other thing is, right, the varnishes, they don't cost much at all.
Yeah, it's like $5 for a can or something.
Right, and you're using way less of it than you're using of the paints themselves to begin with, because it's just one coat over the whole thing.
Okay, so let me do a follow-up question on that, because there's obviously different types of varnishes out there. There's like gloss, matte, metallic, so on and so forth. And they obviously, for those of you who don't know, what the difference is between gloss, matte, and whatnot, because I mean, gloss is pretty obvious; it's going to give a shine to it. But matte refers to it kind of actually reduces shininess. It's designed to give a very flat finish, so it does light does not reflect well off of. So,
and then you have satin, which is a middle of the road.
Yeah, middle of the road. Here's the real question. Is there ever a varnish out there that just kind of doesn't do any of that? Because matte is designed to reduce it, satin stays in the center, gloss is meant to be shiny, but are there any varnishes out there that just don't specifically cater to anything? They're just to put a coating over it and call it a day. Or do they or does it specifically have to be based around size?
I think it's because you are right, because when you look at paints are going, when they dry, they're going to dry satin, semi-satin, matte, or gloss. That's just the way they dry. And so varnish is essentially a type of clear paint. So it's always going to be one of those things. If you can find yourself a satin or a semi-satin, that's probably going to be the closest thing you can find.
I mean, you should really just match your paint, probably.
Right. Well, but so, I mean, within the companies, even, you're really only going to see gloss or matte. It's really hard to find for modeling satin and semi-satin. That's going to be like if you go to Home Depot for wall paint, that's where you're going to find satin and semi-satin. You're not really going to find it for miniature paint. But if you wanted the luster to stay the way it is and not change whatsoever, that's going to be your best bet. Now, I don't know how well they react with acrylics, because then you have the latex paints, you have all these different things. So I don't know how well they work with that. If you're wanting to not change the luster, while matte does deaden it, it usually doesn't deaden it too much. And at the very least, it unifies everything. Because that's the other big thing about varnish is it'll help pull, like I was telling Obs about with his leads, it helps pull everything together because it has that one coat on top of it. So it's kind of viewing everything through a specific filter. So it helps to unify your whole piece.
Did you have a different experience there, Mao? Because it sounded like you kind of did.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I love matte everything. It's all I ever want.
Yeah.
I use matte as well, Mao.
I don't.
I could see it.
Something about I don't like things being too shiny. I just love how matte looks personally.
Yeah, I'm the same.
And in fact, I only have gloss because when you start doing weathering for like tanks and stuff, and or if you ever get like master grade gunpla where they have actually water slide decals, part of how matte makes it not shiny is it has a very small, imperceptible to your eyes and your fingers, grit to it essentially. And gloss has next to no grit. It's nice and it's the smoothest you can get. And so when you're pulling off your water slide decals, gloss is what you want. And then once you have the decals on, then you do an additional layer of matte, and it pulls everything together. That's the only reason why I really keep gloss around. Or for when I was doing Tyranids, I like doing gloss on the tongues because it made it nice and slicky.
Yeah, I can see that.
But beyond that, I don't really use gloss for much of anything.
As an aside, have you ever just seen a random matte car though? It's very jarring.
Yeah.
Just to have, because every car is shiny basically until you just get someone who decided to do a matte paint job, and it's just is it not done rendering?
Have you ever seen that on the Frankenstein together cars?
Your eyes do have this disconnect of what's going on. It's not finished yet.
I think it's partly because we've always kind of see cars associated with that kind of shine, that sleek shine on the end of it. So when it's not there, it's like, what?
Exactly.
All right, so I don't think we've talked about primers, have we?
We touched on Vallejo having primers, but I don't think we went into primers, why you need them and what they are.
I mean, they're not. They don't make a huge difference.
They really don't when it comes to miniatures.
There's some people who are warmer colors use white or in darker or
darker
whatever.
Colors,
prime the top half white, the bottom half gray.
No, seriously, the main primers are white, black, and gray, and the idea is if you take two models and prime one in black and one in white, and then take a spray paint of red and you hit both of them in red, you'll notice a very, very slight.
It's very difficult to get it to come across in miniatures anyway.
Right. So when it comes to the color of your primer, use whatever you have on hand. Gray, if you have to make a choice, gray is perfect because
I usually gray is great. I if I'm painting something black, I like to do a non-black primer just so I know what I'm getting. I know
that's a good point too.
Sort of a thing.
Yeah.
Just get the D&D pre-prom the minis.
I honestly, if the logic is that you should have your undertone match, the primer should match the overtone, I would say still paint it on a lighter undertone. If for only reason is the fact that if it's too dark, you really can't take out the details and enjoy what it is trying to do if it truly is too dark.
Well, so it's not going to make it too the thing is
it's not. No, I'm not saying too, but I'm saying the logic is that if it's supposed to enhance the layer, if you're supposed the layer beneath is going to enhance the layer on top based on what that underneath layer is, you may as well want to show the detail of what you are trying to do.
I'm edgy. Everything's painted black.
I'm just dips his fingers
black
into
and crimson.
I actually use black because for me, if I miss something in the recesses, it's just intense shadow, right? That's kind of why I
like it because it hides like you're saying exactly. You don't really necessarily have to do the bottom of the mini. If you're OCD about it, you're gonna do it, but most people don't paint the bottom of their minis. That's why I like to do black, just because it completely hides it to the bottom.
And it helps too. I found it's easier to see brush strokes on your base coat if it's on a white than it is to see it on gray or black. Again, though, if you're seeing brush strokes, you haven't thinned your paints enough, and that's really more that statement.
Mm-hmm.
But that really covers kind of the color choices of primers. Or again, if you're doing larger models, as I said, Vallejo has all the other colors that kind of doubles as your base coat.
I gotta say, just going over Vallejo's website when I was searching, there are so many damn colors.
Their stuff's nice.
Yep, and a lot of them
I'm really
are
impressed by
color.
them.
It's just they're a different line because they're slightly different formula to what
Yeah, whatever you're using it for.
And in reality, again, it is they are different, but again, it's a very slight difference. Is the average user really going to fully notice the difference? Probably not.
I think if you're much like anything else, the only time min-maxing, and that's the terminology I'm going to use for this one, because that's really what it is when you start getting into like the nitty-gritty of it, is that once you start min-maxing your paints, you're the kind of person who is in this as an art form, and seeing some of the minis out there where people have done some amazing things with, I am certain they have used everything to maximize the colors that they utilize. But for your average person like me, it's not gonna matter.
Yeah, if you're not doing it a lot, Vallejo's the way to go in my opinion, because it's really affordable. They got tons of colors.
It's good colors, yeah.
The dropper, so you can remember how to mix your paints. Like it's just kind of the way to go in my opinion. And it's the easiest to find.
The form factor is really nice. They don't, because they're taller, they don't take up as much table space as well. So they're really easy to store, at least in my opinion, compared to Citadel paints, in my opinion.
Wait till eventually, Meta, you're gonna have a giant like nail polish thing on a desk full of like paints, and then you can't fit them all like I do.
God, please don't.
I actually have.
I have probably like 150 bottles of different paint.
Oh my god! I don't know if I could.
That's more than me.
I was given like half of them, so.
Oh, that makes way more sense. I was like, I don't think you'd do no paint.
I spent like $800 on paint.
But like, I actually have an old baby wipe container that when we used it up, I took the lid off, and now that's just where I keep all my paints in it. I think I have like maybe.
Honestly, what I want to do, I want to take like one of those briefcases that they always use in like movies and shit, and I want to like pop it open. I just want to fill it up with like a pad for just all these little like inks. I just want to be able to walk up to somebody and go like, "What do you need?" Click open, and it's just like rows of paint.
I'll post a pic of my desk here in a second so you can see it after the podcast.
After the podcast. Yeah, you know what?
That's not even all my paint.
Bonus content real fast, just for the sake of it. Are you the kind of people that put like super glue your minis together first or after you've painted?
Ooh, I actually had something to say with that, so yeah, let's do this first.
Yeah, no, I gotta hear
after.
Sometimes
I think it depends on the pieces, I guess.
Oh god, I'm like all of you. I do it after. I do it after. So, I paint and then I glue them together.
Yeah, but generally, I try and paint then glue.
I glue everything together and then paint.
You're a monster.
Oh no, that's what I do. That's what I do. I'm sorry.
wait, you did the other way around.
No, because
my brain, it doesn't work. We've established this. It's the new lore.
If you paint it like on its own, like first off, like it's an arm, right? How are you holding that thing? And if you paint where the glue connection's supposed to be, it's not going to be as good. You then have to scrape off the paint you've already done. Just glue it, and then if you do it on the whole model, you then have the base you can hold from, or even better, stick some silly putty on the base, then put it on like a handle of any kind. And
cheat and dry brush everything, like I do.
I primer everything, and then if it's an arm, I will generally, sandpaper, because you gotta remove the primer between the glue spots, because it's just one worse layer. So then you put that to the sticky putty, like the joint, the base of the joint, and then you paint the arm.
So here's the funny way I do it. I actually kind of do it like Mao, except I just never paint over the connection point ever. I don't primer it. I don't do anything. I actually leave it as is, and then generally I just go like, because the minis are like, this is the blessing of it all, is that most of minis, like, you can paint around the complete outside where the joint doesn't even connect. It'll almost never bleed over. And even if it does, it's fine if it bleeds over just a little bit. Because if you put the right amount of super glue, and I'll even like use Lay's like a toothpick, and I'll kind of like put some super glue out, and I'll dab it around that, and then I'll just scrape it on the inside in there just to make sure it gets a nice good covering. And I've never had a problem doing that. I just make sure I never go over the area where there's going to be a connection for it. But and I do envy exactly what you're saying, which is taking the base, putting the putty on it, and then being able to just move around. But the problem is that I get really fixated on the details of something, and if I can't get in there to get a proper good like brushing on it, it drives me nuts. Nobody else will ever notice, let alone care. But to me, I'll know that the heart.
It's all right, Meta. We all have autism.
You know how you fix that, right? Oh. Practice. Paint more.
No.
Put more things together and paint more.
No.
All right. We've been talking about painting for like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It's an interesting
Have we really?
topic.
Yeah. Painting 101.
So, real fast before we jump topics, the statement I wanted to make about super glue. Super glue is great and all. Plastic cement.
Plastic cement's where it's at.
That's where it's at.
Really?
If you're using plastic models, because plastic cement to me,
I don't use plastic.
Chemical reaction.
Yeah, what it does is it softens
literally
the
welds
plastic.
it. Yes, it welds it
chemically
together.
Just make sure you do it right.
Right.
Certain super glues can also do that too. Some of them can do that. I don't know if we have that one. Unfortunately, most of the models that we have are.
I mean, what are you making that
metal.
isn't plastic?
Generally the models I pick up are almost always non-plastic.
They're metal.
Well,
or
what are they? Just
Yeah,
metal?
They're getting
pewter.
Reaper
No,
minis.
Really pewter.
Pewter.
Yeah. Okay.
Painting
Fair enough.
pewter kind of sucks.
Yeah.
I never minded it so much.
I
Actually, the worst experience I ever had was painting a plastic mini. I kid you not. I painted over, like, I did 2 coats of primer.
It's also
did,
partly that all Games Workshop's metal minis are also just awful.
Yeah.
It might have been against. I don't remember who brand I bought. I will just say that I did what calls it? I just ended up doing Infinity Corvex, I think. What is it called?
Infinity.
Infinity Corvex. I did them. I really enjoyed their models. I like the details on a lot, but I also
they're great.
I also hate them for all that detail because then I have to paint it.
Oh man, like they are some of the most detailed wargaming pieces.
I love their minis so
Get some JDF
much.
stuff, meta.
I did actually.
Cyber Samurais.
I ended up picking up I can't remember the
Yojimbo,
factions, but I ended up getting a faction that was kind of like Xeno characters and / androids, but they were just, like I think wardens or something, or nomads. I don't remember the current for them. And then Christmas they got Lily, my wifey, picked me up another set just to utilize as for creatures if I wanted to create like some alien creatures for our tabletop games, because that's what I pretty much use them for. And I gotta say, I really enjoy them. I hate the fact that I have to glue them all together. I hate the fact that they got like tons of details, but they're really nice minis. They're very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, the worst figure I ever had really was a plastic one. I primed it twice, did 2 coats. I did 2 coats of like a base paint for the skin, and it was dreadful. It just did not stay even throughout the coating. I don't know if I did something wrong. Probably me, but
no, actually, that reminds me. There is something that we did not discuss that you need to do before you do primer.
What?
Wash your miniatures.
Oh, washing, yeah.
So because and I don't know if this is what was happening there, but because they have they come from molds and there's mold release. Sometimes there's still some mold release residue on your minis, and that will prevent the paint, even the primer, from sticking to the miniature.
It wasn't a sticking issue. I definitely did not have a sticking issue, but you have a very good point that is something people should do, which makes it only harder to do it when the company decides that they're going to put like 6 pieces instead of a single model in there for you to glue together and whatnot.
Just stick it in a piece of Tupperware.
That's why I play with pre-assembled minis. So there you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's obviously that we just touched the tip of the iceberg. I mean, I didn't get
there's plenty of YouTube
series. There's so many. You know what? I'm gonna put a challenge. If anybody ever listens to us ever,
damn,
that's the challenge.
Throwing shade on myself. If anybody's listening out there, I want you to create a very updated, good microphone quality, good camera quality, step-by-step. Washing, primer, base coats. Once you've gotten your base coats and the details done, going into washes, and then eventually finishing off with like just a basic, this is like you can do the most basic and nice looking model line. Doesn't have to get into like super crazy stuff. It just has to go over like the 5 principal steps that anybody can utilize for like a model setup. I would just love to see that, because it is hell trying to find like freaking tutorials. They're either like a really long hour-long video, which I'm like, I just want to find the one part about washes, or you were trying to like go through like 800 videos, and I'm just like, I just want a basic line, or just something really simple.
Or it ends up being where it's they're trying to explain to you how to paint the Mona Lisa of miniatures, and you're just like, I just want to get this on the table.
I just want to know like the basic setups to like doing a miniature. If I do detailed stuff, do like a different series, but please make a playlist for just the one.
Yeah, if you're listening, hit Meta up.
Yeah, seriously.
On social media.
Yeah, just hit me up on all the social media that I'm a part of. Good luck.
If I hit him up, hit Lily up, and then Lily can communicate to him. She'll have no clue what's going on. Don't tell her. Don't tell her.
No,
Why are all these people recommending me paints?
Why are these people like telling me about all these mini lines and like these painting like tutorials and whatnot?
Just need to get Tats on the line and have him walk you through some stuff.
I'm gonna just call up Tats like, Tats, yo, dude, what do I do after this?
Video streaming.
Just have him stream you some stuff.
Yeah, right. No, that's actually true. I probably will hit you up, Tats.
You know what? I think that would be a lot of fun. I really do. So
Y'all can have a paint bro stream.